Morning, everyone. Welcome back for our next weekly AMA. My name is Marty, also known as Alcatraz. I'm the lead designer at Raini Studios, working on, amongst other things, our flagship title, The Lords of Light. How you doing today, Draz?
Very well, thank you. Good morning, afternoon, evening to everybody. Had a good week?
Yeah, it's been a pretty good one actually. A lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. We had our first of 3 tournaments this week last night.
Yeah, I played in it last night, but it got too late. It was like 1:30 for me
Yeah,
at the end.
yeah, it's the only problem. Like I don't think we're expecting as many people to show up as they did. There was 31 players, I think, at the
Yeah,
end.
it was something like that.
And I know I saw they haven't updated the website yet, but I saw in the announcements channel,
Harold won.
Harold won and Flick came
Next.
second,
Yep.
and Snoz Cumbers 07 won the Lucky Door prize.
Yes.
So yeah, congratulations to everyone. There's 2 more tournaments this week coming up on the 19th and 22nd of April, respectively. I believe they're US times. But yeah, just jump over onto bluemint.com. Free to register, free to play. Obviously, prize money for the winners, as well as lucky door prizes for everyone who participates, which is always really cool. What else has been happening this week? God, I've got to remember everything that's happening at the moment. Yeah, teams just plodding along, working towards launch. We're sorting out prizes for the Avalanche tournaments today. Had a few delays with those, mostly just because we had some incorrect wallets and stuff, and we obviously want to make sure that if we're going to send out serious prizes to people, that it's going to the correct wallets, because there'd be nothing worse than having that get lost. But yeah, that's all sort of firing along. Yeah, Draz, if you want to just oh yeah, we don't have Arkin with us today. He's off on holidays over in sunny Indonesia. So
Nice.
but yeah, if you want to, we'll kick into some questions. Might be a nice quick AMA this one.
Yes, indeed. All right, I'll start just a couple that came through the Telegram here from Nage14, just asking who are our top 3 competitors with a live crypto game, and how many active users do they have playing the game at any one point in time?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's an interesting question. We do obviously keep an eye on who we consider our competitors to be, and I mean competitors in the sense that a lot of the team members enjoy their games. We enjoy playing them. We like looking at them and seeing what they do. It's always one of those things where like in the game space, and this is like Web 2 or Web 3, you don't generally think of competitors per se. There's enough gamers to go around for everyone is the general idea. But in terms of Web 3 TCGs, game like Gods Unchained, Skyweavers are probably the 2 big ones. There's a few smaller games out there, but there's nothing really that I would consider a serious other game realistically. Like Parallels, it's an interesting little game. They've taken some interesting choices in their art direction. But yeah, there's some cool stuff happening there. Where the question gets interesting though is, do I consider them our primary competitors? And the answer is no. We've been very obvious. We've talked about the fact that which side is it? It's there, I think. Yep, just there. Like we will be on the Epic Game Store at launch. And as part of that, like our studio's Web 5 strategy is that we want to try and onboard, the next million gamers into RTLOL and into Web 3 as a result of that. So probably our more serious competitors and what we're actively trying to build a game that can compete with would be things like MTG Arena, Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh, the more traditional TCGs. At the end of the day, if we can build a TCG which can stand, toe to toe with those, and I have every confidence in design, art, production, development, the team that we have being able to do that. That's where we're sitting in a very interesting spot where we can be one of the first true, like I said, Web 5 games. In terms of like player numbers, I mean, there's not a lot of Web3 gamers out there. Gods Unchained would be one of the big ones. I don't think their numbers are up there with like say Axie Infinity. Although even then, like how you measure Axie Infinity's player base is an interesting question as well. Do you look at their historical numbers? Do you look at their like active wallets and stuff like that? Um, I can say there are very few Web3 games today. Keep in mind that we're well out of the bull market at the moment. I would say there's very few Web3 games which have or would be able to have, say, more than 10,000 like active gamers at any one time. The keyword there being gamers. You may have some games which could have more than 10,000 active wallets, or people who are, say, speculating on the Web3 economy. But in terms of people actually choosing to engage with a game on a day to day basis, if you've got over 10,000, you're in the upper echelon of Web3. Um, but I mean, having said that, like to quote a very famous expression in in gaming, uh, 10,000 is also mice nuts when you compare it to the sort of numbers that something like say MTG Arena or Hearthstone would have. So yeah, like we're definitely aware of our Web3 competitors, but we've got our eyes set a little higher than just aiming to try and compete directly with those Web3 games.
Yeah, sure. What's your definition of Web 5? Is that I'm just looking it up there. It seems it's been thrown around a little bit for different things, but what's your definition for Web 5?
Yeah, Web5 is something that I know we coined it internally as a studio a while back, and I've dropped it in like random talks I've given and like at GDC and stuff like that, or on random Twitter Spaces. To us, Web5 is it's simple. It's Web2 plus Web3. It's 2 plus 3 equals 5.
Okay.
It's basically utilizing the best of both worlds. It's accepting that there may not be enough gamers per se to drive a live multiplayer game that is strictly trying to attract a Web3 player base, but designing the game in such a way that you still appeal to a Web2 user. And then obviously, as we've said, our long-term goal is to bring in, hopefully millions of Web2 users, because at the end of the day, we just have a fun game, not a fun Web3 game, and then slowly can then migrate them across to and show them the benefits of having the Web3 economy as part of our ecosystem.
Just while you're on that, I suppose just one of the last questions in the actual chat there from GM Gaming is just saying, can Alcatraz tell us how he's planning to bring in 1 million users to RTLOL within 12 months after game launch? What is your thought process and how certain are you that you will achieve it?
Yeah, so I'm going to go door knocking. If I knock on a million doors and like tell them to play RTLOL, then problem solved.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean it's easy, right? Realistically, to hit a goal like that, it's a combination of I guess three things. One, you've got to have the core product in the first place. If you
Tick.
can you can spend billions on marketing. You can spend have amazing launch partners that you work with. But if you don't have that core game, then yes, you might be able to bring in 1 million users. And I should add to this as well that I'll circle back to this. That a million users is what we call a vanity metric, and it doesn't actually matter. But I'll circle back to what I mean by that. But yeah, so number one, you've got to have the right product, and that product has to have been built with the intention of not just flipping a user, but actually keeping them for the long haul. So you've got to have things like a great tutorial system. You've got to have things like, ways to engage and retain a user over the long term. So you need things like, for example, a battle pass system. You need a leaderboard system that not only incentivizes players to keep trying to get to higher ranks, but rewards them for doing so. You need to have systems like regular tournaments, for example, that can reward both your high end pro players, but then you need to also do things to support the other 99% of your player base. Maybe lucky door prizes, maybe rewards just for logging in every day. There's a variety of things that has to happen in that core product to make that work. And to coin a Web2 term, we refer to them primarily as what we call a live ops title. So it's one of those things. Everyone, like in traditional gaming, you go back say 20, 30 years where you build a game, you go gold where the CDs go off, or the floppy disks go off to get mass produced. They get put in boxes and they sit on shelves at GameStop or EB Games or wherever it happens to be for your local game store, basically wherever you are in the world. Games don't work like that anymore. These days, getting the game to launch is step one of the process. All the work we've done up to now to get to day one, to launching the game, is designed to put us in a position where we can then build and grow with our expanding community at that point in time. Like for us, that's when the work starts. That's not when the work ends. That's when we start going, all right, let's look at what people are doing. Do we want new game modes? Do we want new sets? Do we want new, like, how do we keep this game going and growing and expanding with our player base? And honestly, building live ops games is it's a rush. It's incredibly fun, and it's a lot of work too, obviously. But being able to like have that very direct relationship with the community, with the customer, I guess, where you can actually like get that feedback of like, hey, we really want a draft mode, or we really want a best of 5 competitive mode, because George and Huncho, best of 3 just isn't doing it for them anymore. So yeah, like I said, getting to launch, that's step one. And like I said, having that product is critical to that. Second is marketing, and like I said, behind the scenes right now, like I can tell you right now, I've got a meeting later on today to look at our launch trailer, and start planning out, all the things we'll be doing like from day one, basically, in terms of like showing people the product, user acquisition, user engagement, and how we actually expose people to RTLOL. And then very directly related to that is your partnerships. So again, gone are the days where again, go back 10, 20 years, the era of big box games, where you would basically, I mean, even back then, you would outsource it to like a marketing agency. You'd say, hey, this is our game, here's a bunch of the assets, here's your budget, and here's the number of people we want and the countries that we think, or it's an Xbox game, here are the countries that have sold the most Xboxes, so you know where to sort of target your marketing efforts. These days, again, that doesn't work anymore. One, the average consumer doesn't respond to marketing in the same way as they used to, but you've got such more interesting ways of marketing to the consumer now. You've got people like influencers and streamers. You've got organizations like Ready Player DAO. You've got influencers like Ali Straza, who you know compared to your return you would expect from a traditional marketing campaign. One, it's way more fun to actually work with, because you actually get to create content on the fly, and be much more real and authentic with both the partners you're working with and with the end consumer that is absorbing that content. But it allows you to really like target in completely new ways that just we haven't had access to before. um, like some of the stuff that we track on the back end is we obviously look at, and there's a bunch of ways that we do this. Like sometimes it happens through surveys. It happens honestly just reading through Telegram and seeing what other games our community talks about. But you get some interesting data points where it's like, okay, the average like RTLOL user, like the user who ends up highly engaged, turns out they really like playing Civilization, just as a completely, I don't know if that's actually the case, I'm just picking like a random game off the top of my head here. So all of a sudden, instead of us trying to run like very wide marketing campaigns and either not really attracting users at all, or attracting low value users, people that might churn relatively quickly, we can do very specific marketing campaigns, maybe in the Civilization Reddit, or with a Civilization streamer or YouTube content creator, and say, hey, do a 24-hour live stream, and every hour we're going to give away, I don't know, some photon or something like that. Like there's so many cool ways to actually market a game. And then just to circle back to what I said at the start, how yeah, I've said I want to get 1 million people into the game, but realistically, our goal is to bring 1 million people, 1 million sticky people into the game. And what I mean by that is, so 1 million users is a vanity metric, especially in mobile. So obviously, a lot of my past work was in like free to play mobile games, where you can almost like go to various marketing agencies and say, hey, here's my game, here's a trailer, and I want to spend 20 cents a user, 50 cents a user, like whatever the number happens to be. And there's websites out there, if you do some Googling around like CPI numbers, you can actually see what the average cost per user is, or CPI cost per install, based on like geographical data and like genre of game. So, if you're trying to launch a role-playing game in Japan, it's very expensive to acquire users. If you're trying to launch a hyper-casual game in India, it's very cheap to acquire users because you've got so many users there, like clamoring for that kind of content. So like I said, getting 1 million users, that's we could do that day one if we wanted to just drop a wad of money on it. But realistically, we want to make sure that we're getting 1 million good users who discover the game correctly. They go through our onboarding process, which has been carefully curated. The steps you go through in the tutorial aren't by accident. It's very much by design of like, we're trying to introduce you to the game in a way that you're most likely to keep playing after the tutorial. And we're also trying to show you what we call Kodak moments. We're trying to show you like the fun, engaging, like really sticky moments that, for example, when like a crypto ban hits or something like that, the people like sit back and go, wow, that's really cool. And they want to keep experiencing the game. So yeah, it's very much a case of trying to get that 1 million users who are engaged, and then working with that growing community for what we need to do to keep you playing. As I said, for 10 years is the real goal. Like, make this a 10-year game. If we can live in a world where we do our job properly and we've got enough people wanting to play the game that we can keep doing new sets, new content, new game modes, all that sort of stuff, until 2033, then yeah, that's the overall goal. But yeah, like I said, getting to launch is step one of that. Having the right product is critical in that, more than anything else. There's very famous games which had all the marketing in the world, had all the launch partners in the world, but if you don't have that core product, then it's all falls apart. If you look at like Cyberpunk 2077 on day one, they had a very rough launch. What was that space? No Man's Sky. I mean, that was hilariously bad for many reasons. And it took them the better part, I think, 5 years to turn that around. So yeah, it's not
Yeah.
not
No, that's
easy.
cool. No, it's a
but,
big subject, definitely.
Yeah. But
Without a
yeah,
doubt.
like, don't get me wrong, we read every comment in Telegram, and I see the when marketing, and marketing is not quick. So there's like I said, there is stuff that we're preparing now for 2-3 months down the road. And one of the interesting things, if you're paying attention as well, so I'm a big fan of dress rehearsals. There's a lot of things that we've done, say from the start of the year up to launch, which is basically giving our team a chance to practice what we are going to do after launch. There's a reason we've held a $10,000 tournament. There's a reason we've worked with some of the biggest streamers and influencers in the space. There's a reason that we've done, new websites, and we're experimenting with new ways to work with our Web3 economy with things like the raffles and auctions that we did in 7DS. Will we get them all right? No. The raffles and auction system we did for 7DS needs to be improved, and we will improve that for the next launch. We listen to the feedback that we get, and honestly, that feedback that we get from our entire community right now is critical, because that's how we know if we're getting it right or we're getting it wrong, and it lets us know if we need to change what we are planning on doing down the road. So yeah, there's things that we do now to prepare for launch. There's things we do on the back end, like there's systems that we're building now that won't even need to exist until we have 10,000 people playing the game all at the same time. But we know that that's our goal, so we know we have to build those systems to prepare for that eventuality. So yeah, very long answer there.
Yeah.
Hopefully that was interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think
so
you've done well, actually. I suppose you've sort of touched on a lot of things there. Sebastian, one of the questions he had was any ideas on a marketing campaign before the epic and full release? Obviously, you've touched on a lot of the things that you will be doing after the full release. And, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things still going on with the mini tournaments and things like that. And obviously, you guys are still working on various partnerships, I imagine, in the background. Lots of different things happening. You
Yeah.
hear rumblings of new stuff coming. So
Keep in mind as well, there's like, yeah, we'd love to, do a full marketing campaign tomorrow and get the game into as many hands as possible. Until we've got a lot of the other systems in place and tested and we know are working, you know, again, going back to that concept that, downloads and users is a vanity metric. Like, as harsh as this might sound, having a user who comes in, plays the game for a day and then leaves is it's almost less than worthless. It's less than, it's not worthless. It's less than worthless because it actually costs us server resources. Like every time someone spins up a game of RTLOL, it costs us a tiny bit of money. Not anything, that we're going to go broke over it, but we pay a bill to our server provider for every
yeah,
game of RTLOL that gets run. Um, so yeah, we could bring in millions of users tomorrow. That part's easy, but all, especially if we don't have any way to engage or retain those users, all that actually happens is we go broke. And I've actually, years ago, I worked with a multiplayer game where they launched. They were wildly successful for a week or two. And then their studio had to actually shut their doors because they realized that the game wasn't generating revenue, and just because of the success they had in this first like couple of weeks, that their bill for like server hosting was going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they didn't have it. um, so yeah, it's you can actually go broke by being too successful when you make a multiplayer game, which is just such a wild concept.
yeah,
So yeah, like, please believe me when I say that yes, there's a lot of interesting things happening behind the scenes. Um, Everything that people are clamoring for on Telegram, like marketing, it's happening. But we're going to do it right because honestly, I don't want to be unemployed, and I would like to be able to do this for many, many years to come. So, for purely for selfish reasons, I'm going to make sure that we nail this launch, and yeah, RTLOL can be around for a long time.
yeah. Well, I mean, those reasons are good for all of us, really. And
Mm.
I think anyone who's watching can see that this team is highly considered and very deliberate in everything they do, which is fantastic. I mean, it's a if you look at it from just a standard business type model, you'll this is the way standard businesses typically run. They get
Yep.
things right, and then they do their launching, and then they can support everybody that comes in, and it just builds as a base from there. Whereas a lot of the crypto stuff in the past have been just that pump and pump mentality, which is not a long term sort of style of
Yeah.
mentality. It's not going to last. While you're on that, I suppose Nage was just asking, does Rainy make dollars as people play and transact in photons, or only when people purchase cards?
Uh, it's an interesting question. So obviously, there's it's a multifaceted answer. So like yes and no. Um, so I mean, will we make money directly off people earning and spending photon? No. um, Outside of if we choose to release, or which we will, like there'll be things that you'll be able to buy in the store which will be like directly purchasable with Photon directly. It won't just be card packs. There'll be other things available for Photon as well. That makes us money per se, from the point of view that it will remove that Photon out of the ecosystem, which less supply, higher demand, price goes up. Um, and obviously, when we are doing the tokenomics behind Photon, some of the actual Photon token will be held in the Rainy treasury, which will allow us to fund things like paying for servers, paying for team members, and stuff like that. So yeah, Photon will be a way that the studio can generate some form of revenue. Um, but yeah, as with most TCGs, our primary way of generating revenue per se will be through new sets and new packs and new cards. It's sorry, not enough coffee yet this morning. It's a model that's has literally been around for decades. It's a very reliable model, because it allows you to both have consistent drops within your game. Um, that's adding new content that the players want to play on that sort of regular cadence. So it allows us to have a very smooth sort of like, okay, we're going to plan out how many drops we want to do, and when we're going to release sets, we can look at those sets in terms of how they're going to impact the meta, and sort of make sure that we are building a very healthy like game ecosystem. When we're looking at the other things that we'll potentially be selling with things like Photon, or if we do more traditional, say, in-app purchases, generally speaking, they're going to be for things which are either cosmetic in nature, or are built around the concept of driving user engagement and retention. And battle passes is probably like the perfect example of that. Any designer who designs a battle pass with the intention of generating revenue has completely missed the point. So battle passes and systems similar to that are about driving user engagement. So they're not there so much that we're going to make $20 or whatever it happens to be off you when you buy the battle pass. The more important thing that the battle pass is doing for us is keeping that user engaged with the game until our next pack drop, until our next big tournament or stuff like that. So it allows us to keep a much more healthier multiplayer ecosystem around, which is by far the more important thing.
Yeah, I think the battle pass is a fantastic idea. Obviously, I mean, I've played Fortnite just as a game example, I suppose, and their battle pass, obviously, just reaching those levels each time, picking up in their case, skin, or we might pick up a card from this, that when you reach level 20 or 30 or whatever of the battle pass, you get this card. It gets dropped to you or something. Just like you say, just methods to keep people engaged. Fantastic. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, I'm happy to talk about it more, obviously. But there's a very famous paper. Basically, it's outlined. It's called Bartle's taxonomy. I think I've mentioned it before on the AMA, but it basically breaks up your like player taxonomies for multiplayer games specifically, and you can sort of look at that, and then you sort of break it down to, okay, like for each of these cohorts, which of these groups do we feel will be most represented within our game, and we track current user activity to get an idea of where that currently is. And it's like, cool, how do we engage achievement hunters? How do we engage as Bartle calls them, the killers, the super competitive players? How do we engage the explorers, people that care about the lore, the backstory, like that sort of thing? So we sort of break down players into these different buckets of like, okay, like this user cares about this sort of thing, or this user is really into building decks, this user really is into just playing the game. And then we sort of design the engagement features around trying to target each of those buckets as much as we can. Because for example, for using Bartle's example, like the killers, the like the high end competitive players, they would love having like an MMR based leaderboard with rewards up the top based on your top performance in the month. But for a more casual player, or someone who maybe cares more about the lore and the backstory, all the work you put into that leaderboard, they literally couldn't care less. But if you have someone who writes this really awesome backstory, or does like an interactive single player mode that exposes new characters and stuff like that, they'll be all over that. But your competitive players won't even touch it. So it's an interesting thing of building a game like this. I said that the live ops style of game, in that you're literally trying to build different experiences for different people, all within the one like cohesive wrapper. So yeah, super fun.
Yeah, sweet. I think as Arkin said, I think in the last AMA maybe, just the way that you guys have built the back end of things, where you can tick the boxes for various attributes of a card to bring it in. That aspect of things is going to save a lot of time for you guys, obviously, as you progress through things, and you'll be able to focus more on this sort of stuff, I suppose, which would be great. And new games, I suppose, that you might be bringing out, which are
Like I said, there's a lot of things that we work on behind the scenes. And I said, the unfortunate part of this industry and this kind of work is there's a lot of things we work on that the average gamer will never see the light of day, for a variety of reasons. And this is both within RTLOL and with the other stuff we might choose to work on. Purely like a lot of things just don't see the light of day because they're just not fun. That's always going to be like the most important benchmark. Like if we design a card and the card isn't fun, even if that goes through like art, QA, all that sort of stuff, we're not going to launch it. Like you will never see that card in that form. we may choose to take the art and put it on something else. We may choose to try and tweak the design to make it fun. But at the end of the day, if something just isn't enjoyable, we're never going to do it. I mean, where if you look at say games that have like achievements, I know George asked a question about like daily quests and stuff like that. But if you look at things like quests and achievements, some games will do. I mean, WoW did this back in like alpha, and then they scrapped it because they realized it was terrible design. If you put it in a game, an achievement for like die 10 times, people will join a game and will go out of their way to try to die 10 times, which just makes a really unfun experience for everyone else in the game. Maybe you could do that in a single player game, but even then, it's just such like you're reinforcing such a negative like game loop that you just don't want to do
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
Where there's so many more positive ways you can use things like achievements, quests, and stuff like that to again to reinforce positive behavior, to reinforce the kind of fun experience. Like if we have a player who maybe hasn't seen a bunch of the OPAs, then yeah, we just give them a daily quest of play crypto band 3 times, and all of a sudden they get to experience how fun that card actually is. So it's
Yeah, that's a better way to do it for sure. Just a question from Misen, the top one up in the chat there. When the game launches, will all cards get the same Photon Battle Rewards equally, or will some cards like legendaries earn more?
the plan at this stage, and this is very much still in very active design. Like there's multiple spreadsheets open on my computer right now going through this exact thing. The current plan is that the rewards will be skewed slightly towards the more rarer cards. So a legendary would generally get more rewards than a common card would. We're trying to do that in a way that also balances out the fact that you can only put one legendary in a deck, but you can have 4 commons in a deck as well. So there's sort of that aspect to balance out there a little bit. And there's the fact that, yeah, like we're trying to find the happy medium between if you just have a bunch of, say, common and uncommon cards. Obviously, they were released as NFTs in Genesis, or say rares in like 7DS. Like how much should you be earning compared to someone who maybe just has one mythic? Maybe they just own like Quantum Rug as an example. So yeah, that's very much still in active design. And once we have that locked down, obviously we'll let everyone know. But yeah, I would be very surprised if all cards would earn equal rewards. There will be some sort of weighting system to reward, if nothing else, either the rarer cards or the cards that you just can't put as many into a deck. But yeah, once we have that worked out, we'll we'll obviously share that.
No, fair enough. Are you able to tweak? I imagine you might be in the background, like as let's say the game's launched and everything's running well, and then all of a sudden you notice, geez, that's not worth, that's paying out too much or paying out too little. You can tweak that in the background without anyone really noticing.
We can.
Yep.
Our goal for that would be that anything we do along those lines would be like completely public.
Sure.
So we're not just going to tweak it and not tell anyone. Like we would tweak it and let people know.
Okay.
Most likely we would store that data on chain somewhere as well, just to add to the sort of like again we're a Web3
Transparency.
yeah, exactly. In the same
Yep.
way that when we did the Lucky Door prizes last week, we spent the time and effort and we built out a little like contract using Super Oracle's VRF so that all that data was like immutable on chain. Like at the end of the day, we're big on open transparency, and we're going to do everything we can to try and make sure we're reinforcing that in every way we can. But yeah, when we build systems like that, and actually a lot of systems within the game are built with this in mind, where the actual data they pull in is actually stored somewhere outside of the client itself, whether that be stored on our backend provider, whether that's stored on chain. The idea basically is that, for example, if I wanted to change the cost of a wizard, we can actually do that without having to push a change to the client. I can just go into a tool that I have. Be careful how much I say there. Make the change, and the next time you jump into a game, it will have that different cost basically. Like the server and the client basically checks and goes, "Hey, do I have the latest version of the game data?" and pulls it in if it doesn't. It's really important because, especially as we grow, um, releasing a new build takes time. Not only does it take time in terms of like actually the physical, like we need to make the build and upload it to, different storefronts, but there's a whole QA process that we go through for any new build, because you want to make sure that if we've, say, pushed a change to balancing out wizards, that hasn't broken the main menu or the deck editor or the best of 3 mode. Like it's game dev is a finicky beast in that regard. What game is it? I want to say it's Half-Life. No,
do you say a car racing game where it broke the menu one time?
yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, I've worked on so many games where like you change one thing. Yeah, like there was a mobile car racing game. It actually comes out pretty soon. Actually, I'll be able to talk about when it's released.
Sweet.
Where like changing the speed of the car broke the menu because they tied some animation data that the menu then pulled in off the cars that were driving around in the menu scene. And yeah, but there was the other one I'm thinking of. I think it's Team Fortress 2. If you Google it, it'll come up. Where like in the actual like folder where the game gets installed, there's like a random like picture of something. And it's like a picture of a ladder or just something super random. And if you delete that picture, the game won't work. But it never gets used in the game anywhere, as far as anyone can tell. It's just a thing. So at some point it maybe got used in the game. Maybe it's used for like a seed for a random number generator or just something like that. It's not used anymore, but there's still enough code referring to it that if you take it away, it breaks everything. Because that's the thing, like quite often in games, like we'll maybe remove a feature, or maybe there's a minion's ability that we try out and it's like, it's not really fun. All right, we'll get rid of it. But we generally don't delete it from code because we'll leave it there. Maybe we'll come back to it later on. And quite often when you see in a lot of games, like people like leaking, like, oh, they're trying this out, or this is going to happen. Or if you remember the GTA 3, the hot coffee fiasco, that's what it was. There's a lot of things that get pulled before a game launches, but the code is still there, because pulling code out of a project is actually incredibly difficult sometimes, especially as every piece is like, talking to each other and, working with each other.
I can't imagine. Must get super complex. That's why I suppose designing it in a modular type of way, so that you don't break things when you add things, is a very sensible approach, which obviously game developers get that experience the more they do.
Yeah, for sure.
Nage 14 has just asked, will there be a business model with the capability of time-based upgrades where people can pay to get things faster, or fixed prices only?
Not
sure what that.
I think I know what they're referring to. Like some games that do like battle passes will have the option to like spend money to like speed things up or stuff like that.
That's
right. Even just buy like the next level for gold or whatever currency it sort of uses.
Possibly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So again, it comes back to balancing out design. Like if you get the math wrong and you let someone buy a battle pass, but they can just unlock every level on day one, well, it's not serving its purpose for driving engagement. Having said that, a very common design pattern that you use for economy design is the concept of trading money for time. You acknowledge that maybe you have users who are time poor, and God knows I count as that for a lot of games that I choose to play. I play against 16-year-olds who will spend 14 hours a day on the same map in Counter-Strike or COD or whatever it happens to be, and I just don't have 14 hours a day to do that. So sometimes you have options to basically buy upgrades or buy levels for, say, a battle pass that sort of speeds things up for players. We're definitely not against that, but it will be done in a balanced way, because, like I said, the worst thing you could actually do would be to let a player unlock everything on day one, because again, then there's nothing to do, there's nothing to drive towards, there's nothing to discover. Like that sense of discovery is gone. And even though that user has dropped a bunch of currency, whatever it happens to be, whether it's tokens, fiat, or whatever, on like day one, they're going to churn because there's nothing left in the game for them. So if we do things like that, it will be done in a very balanced way.
Okay, cool. GM Gaming is just asking, when is that third RTLOL map, the one that you can see on the side there, going to be playable, and will there be more? It's been saying coming soon for at least 5 to 6 months.
It has, and I can give you the very blunt, very honest answer about that. We built the map. Sorry, we built the board. We put it in, and we were getting it all ready, and we weren't happy with it. It didn't live up to the standard that we had set for everything that we do. So we didn't release it. I mean, it's a very, for better or for worse, it's a common theme that I think you'll hear me talk about quite a bit. In that, we have a world-class team of professionals. If something is not up to the standard that both we set for ourselves and that we hope our community holds us to, we're not going to release it. That board is still being looked at. It's a lower priority at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that we need to get in place for launch. Will you see that board eventually? Sure. Should we probably just remove the coming soon? Maybe. You could potentially argue that the mistake we made there was putting a coming soon in the first place, because if we didn't put that there, George wouldn't be asking about it right now.
Yeah.
But it's balancing out that sort of like, I've said this many times on these AMAs, like we've got to balance out how visible and transparent we are with the community, with the acknowledgement that sometimes things don't go the right way, and sometimes we need to remove things, or especially in gaming, sometimes things take longer than what you expect them to. This is not the sort of industry where I can sit here and go, oh yeah, we can build this and it's going to take exactly 60 hours for this developer to do it. It just doesn't work that way. So yeah, it's what I can do is, let me have a quick look. I can show a screenshot of the board of like where it's at the moment.
Nice. I mean, I'd leave it there. Really, it's just an indication that at some point in time there will be other board styles to play, and
Yep.
I imagine that'd be quite fun once you got the game up and running to be able to create different boards and things to play with. Is it sort of? It
sure.
would be. Are they sort of modular as well? It's just a. Is it a
they're
veneer on top of?
They're mostly modular. Like the actual game itself sort of sits on top of like the physical board. But there are also things that we do within it where the board is like hooked into the game state. We don't use that as much at the moment. But there's a system there, for example, that if we wanted to, when a player takes damage, like on some of the boards, there's like little like flames around the board and stuff like that. We can have them actually like do things based on like someone taking damage or playing a season or things like that.
Right.
So it's not just a pure cosmetic that like the game sort of sits on top of. There is like hooks between the two. But yeah, most of it is obviously more on the cosmetic side of things. And yeah, obviously the systems are built out for things like that to allow us to do cosmetics. But yeah, it's obviously we're not going to release something if it's not up to the standard that we set ourselves to.
No, fair enough. Were you able to find that or not?
I found one. It's from like, it's not the most recent one, but
no pressure.
I'm just having a quick look. Yeah, let me grab that one. How do I? Remember how? Oh, that's right. You can't screen share just an image on this. I've got to like put it. It will screen share videos, but it doesn't do images for some reason. So I've got to like go. I just have to like set it as my desktop background, and then I screen share my desktop basically. So this is like a much earlier. I don't think we've shown any of this one, have we?
No, I've never seen it. It looked a bit
so this is
or something, did it?
Yeah, this is a very early work in progress on that particular board.
Oh yeah, district.
Yeah. So
in ruins.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of iteration and work since then. This is what the boards sort of look like when they sort of first start getting built out. So they sort of start as that sort of like more like, this is like a gray box or like a wireframe sort of build. And then we sort of, once we're happy with that, then we sort of start texturing and lighting and all that stuff sort of on top of that. So
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So, but yeah, will you see more boards? Absolutely. But yeah, we're not going to release one. I mean, I'll give you a little bit of a hint here. There's actually physical aspects to this board as it sits right now that wouldn't work with some of the new stuff that we're building. So yeah, like I don't. Yeah, you can see my mouse. Like how like this is all like destroyed up here, for example, and like it's not symmetrical down here, like you'll see on our current boards. There'd be reasons why that isn't going to work for us. So yeah,
Right.
it is a cosmetic thing, but you've got to take into account how it's going to actually impact the visuals, the gameplay. It
Yeah.
needs to read well on a variety of screens. We need to make sure it would read well on mobile. That was actually one of the big problems we had up here. A lot of this rubble when you actually go down to like a phone size screen,
Yep.
looked really just like blurry. It didn't actually it didn't look like rubble. It just looked like random things. So yeah,
Yeah.
especially when you're targeting smaller screens, you need things to be like super clear and defined sometimes.
Just on that, I mean, no commitment, obviously, but how long roughly do you think it would take after full launch? And that's obviously something that's happening sometime after full launch to get a mobile version of the game out. Because I remember reading an article on Hearthstone one time saying that they attributed their biggest increase in users when they went mobile.
Yeah, absolutely.
No pressure.
No, like definitely not gonna like the answer I'll give there is the second half of this year.
Right.
Um, like it's I'm not gonna put a more strict
Yep.
time frame on it than that because it's yeah. Um, building a like yeah, mobile obviously is super important for these sort of games. There's a lot of gamers around the world that don't have access to desktops or laptops, or don't have as convenient access to desktops and laptops. Um, if you're sitting on a bus, if you're traveling or stuff like that. But then you actually take that thought process a step further. You go, okay, so the average user who's playing the game on mobile probably isn't connected to Wi-Fi. They're probably connected to like 3G, 4G, 5G, depending where in the world they are and where the technology
Yeah.
available.
Of course.
So all of a sudden, you need to do a lot of work there to make sure that your infrastructure supports that. How do we handle what we call micro disconnects? On desktop, we have players who get disconnected from time to time. Um, they may come back after 30 seconds or a minute, or they're just gone. But on mobile, you might have a user who drops out for half a second, and that might be happening multiple times every minute. Um, you know,
Mhm.
if you have a game where you know it's waiting for every client to respond after a move or a card is played, all of a sudden that single change to a mobile and that less reliable internet can have huge effects on the quality of the connection. Um, and that's ignoring the obvious thing. Like a lot of work that goes on mobile comes down to what we call UI and UX. Like it's how does it play on a phone like that big? Like all of a sudden, you know how readable are your cards? How readable is the card text? Do you need to change the scaling? Um, you know, Phones have generally very different graphical performance, especially if you're targeting like say the more like low to mid range like Android devices. So yeah, there's a lot of things that have to happen to make a mobile build that lives up to the standard that we are trying to hit for ourselves. Um, Hence why our plan is let's launch on desktop. Let's make sure we've got the game like at 100% there. And then we know when we go to mobile, our focus can just be on giving the best. Like we're not going to be solving like, cards not playing properly. We know we can just focus on creating the best experience on mobile that we can.
Sure. No, that sounds great. Very complex, I'd say, by the sounds. It looks like it'd be great though. Like I've watched a couple of Chad Rainey's feeds and various other things on my phone, and just the colors and everything look fantastic. I don't know
Oh,
how
for
it would
sure.
work for
Yeah.
dragging and stuff, but I imagine it would work quite well on a mobile device.
Yeah.
Um,
And then, I mean, even then, there's a bunch of other things to keep in mind as well. Like every platform that you target has its own requirements around, uh, things like user generated content. So if we wanted to have, say, chat at some point down the road, Apple in particular have a bunch of additional requirements you have to tick off to make sure that that's supported correctly. Again, it's not that it's not doable. It's that it's just more work. So you've got
yeah,
to then you've got to sort of weigh up the priorities between, okay, so if we're going to build out a mobile version, how many users do we get? Like, is it worth the effort compared to say putting more work into maybe a new game mode, or if you had to trade off between say this again, it's all theoretical between say a mobile version or a Switch version of the game. There's yeah, it's there's a lot of very much like a balancing act with game development and game design and everything that we do, like game production, I guess, to sort of wrap it up like that,
Yeah,
of working out where we can deliver the most value and give the best experience to as many people as possible, accepting that we're never going to be able to do everything. So it's always trying to prioritize and work out, what we need to do.
Cool. You're doing well. George is just asking, will you remove the legendary card Zeus?
Remove, no. Balance, yes.
Okay.
Doesn't see as much play as we thought it would. We didn't touch it in the last pass of balance updates, primarily because I thought, I actually personally thought that red yellow would be much bigger in the meta than what it currently is, especially like those aggressive, like Year of the Rabbit when Lambo style decks. But yeah, we'll take a look at Zeus. And again, like this is tying back to something we've touched on in the past, where we're not going to remove cards. I mean, especially not a card that is an NFT. But we will look at tweaking or balancing or releasing other cards to make Zeus competitive. So
sure, that's a good idea. It's pretty well it, I suppose. I mean, I think if George has got one other one here, will there already be daily quests right at launch, or better yet, what will be available for us to do at launch? I think you've touched on a bunch of those things with the battle passes and stuff. I don't know if you wanted to say anything more on that. That's the last question at the moment.
Yeah, daily quests specifically, not sure. Again, we're not going to commit to anything until we've got everything sort of locked down for that. And again, a lot of that is very much a case of like where we will build a feature as quick as we can and we'll test it internally and go, all right, as I said, rule number one, is this fun? Is having daily quests the way that we've implemented them currently adding to the experience, detracting, or just doing nothing for us? And then we iterate, we tweak, we look at it over time. The good thing with something like daily quests is, again, something like that, or achievements would be another good example. We generally will build them out in a way that we can change them and adjust them and tweak them over time. Daily quests aren't too bad for that because, like, realistically, you can always go through and like just change what the quest will be for the next day and stuff like that. Achievements, you need to make sure you get right generally from day one, because you can't really go back and tweak them after people have already started earning them. You can always add new achievements over time, but yeah, you don't want to have an achievement that's either broken or just not fun. So, but yeah, our goal is there will be a lot of things to do from day one from launch, that will incentivize and encourage people to explore and play as much RTLOL as they would like. And that's always going to be like the driving metric that we sort of like work towards. We're never going to be a studio that our goal is revenue. Our goal is, okay, as I've said, let's get 1 million people playing the game and let's keep them coming back day after day after day. And then as a byproduct of that, if we've got 1 million people playing the game, then yeah, we can release a set of cards and hopefully people will buy them. And again, I can avoid unemployment. But yeah, like that driving, the driving thing is me not being unemployed. But the driving thing for us is always going to be, let's have that just great, fun core experience that people want to come back and play day after day. And then let's work with the community and let's build on top of that.
Excellent. I think you guys are doing a great job. Well, that's the last question, mates. At the moment, I can't see any more. Oh, hang on. What is crafting going to be used for in Lords of Light?
What's crafting? We don't have crafting. I haven't seen anything about crafting, have I?
There was an image one time.
Was there? Oh, okay, we did.
The game loop diagram. Yeah, you
Okay.
did sort of announce that stuff was
cool.
going to happen in the marketplace and all that sort of thing.
Cool. There will be a variety of crafting systems either at launch or after launch. The primary one will be basically to answer the question of what happens with cards that you either don't want or need anymore, or if you have excess cards in your collection. But yeah, that stuff will be announced a bit closer to launch. But yeah, there will be some other crafting related systems that will hopefully tie into not just RTLOL, but potentially will tie into some other things as well, is what we're sort of driving towards at the moment.
Excellent. All right, that seems to be it.
Cool. Yeah, just under the hour. So I keep saying, oh, hey, this will be a nice quick one, and it never is. But yeah, always fun to chat and share what we're up to.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Lots of questions from George.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Keeping it flowing.
yeah. The George AMA.
George
So
question time. We just call it that
yeah,
from now on.
cool.
All right.
But yeah, hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that answered some questions people had about what we're up to over at this side. Yeah, don't forget, obviously, 2 more tournaments in the Rainy Raindown this week. And we do have, I believe the next one starts at the same time and the other one's a bit later. So yeah, I know Blue Mint are playing around with some start times to try and see what works best for the global community. So yeah, if there are some of those tournaments which unfortunately aren't a great time for you personally to play, when you have a community that's literally online 24 hours a day, it can be hard to try and work out the best times. But yeah, we are trying to target different time zones to give everyone the opportunity to play in those events.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the meantime, have a great day, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you. See you guys.
Catches.